Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I can see that some of you are just popping in right now, and we'll give it a few minutes until most of the 30 attendees who joined today are on this Zoom webinar. So really appreciate you coming on. As with every other session of the webinar, I'm going to show quickly my screen. To remind you guys that if it's the first time you're joining, welcome and thank you. This session is part of Biosocial Scotland. So we have this support program, which is meant to give some tips and practical advice for you to solve some common challenges that you might have around communications and marketing for social enterprises who sell products, services, experiences, and also some third sector organizations who are in our community. So we hope you find this helpful. We have 8 sessions in total, and you can pick and mix, really look at the different topics that we have, and some of them you might find more valuable than others, or you'll be less comfortable with a specific subject, so you might want to sign on to that one. We have the whole program on biosocialscotland.com/bootcamp. And today we are going to be talking about planning cohesive multi-channel communications. So, really, how can you kind of plan things well between your website, your email, your social media channels, even if you know the sort of key messages that you want to share, the initiative you want to promote, or the products that you want to sell, how do you kind of go about, developing a plan for your communication that makes sense, makes your life a little bit easier, and having a content strategy in place so that you don't have to, every day think from scratch and have to improvise, but you have that sort of like long-term objective key in your mind. It's focused, it's clear, and you know what you have to produce. So last little note before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to say that if you are a social enterprise that sells products, services, or experiences that sort of fall under the ethical gifts category, if you sell something that could be a good fit for, offering to a cousin, a grandma, a friend for Christmas, then I would love to hear from you. Biosocial Scotland is going to be a campaign that runs from mid-November onwards. So I would love to promote you if you have such a product or a service. So get in touch with me. You have my email right there on the screen, and we can chat about how we can feature you. So today we are speaking with Jennifer Murray and Nikki Esketh. I'm really glad that they joined us because the two of them are really good experts. So I think it'll be super helpful for you guys to learn tips. Jennifer, she's a business advisor at CIS and Just Enterprise. For almost a year, she's been helping social enterprises like you to refine and develop their business plans, their marketing plans with tailored advice and support. So it's great that we have her with us today. She also likes to keep busy. I saw that she's doing a PhD right now, and she's also lecturing. So consumer marketing research has no secrets for her. We also have Nikki. She's a marketing consultant. She has over 20 years of experience. So she lends her marketing expertise to different kinds of industries, from tourism to community-owned businesses. And whether it's like marketing planning, business planning, she works on all different kinds of disciplines and industry sectors. So she works with SKS Scotland. We have a board member there, so really happy that she can join us too. And if you need any kind of consultancy support, then that would be a good organization to look at. So we look at how many of us are here. Great, so we're probably going to start shortly. A last little note from me. As you know, if you have joined one of these sessions before, we have a chat box running, so please add your questions for us as we go along. I'll be monitoring those and keeping a note. It's a great opportunity to talk about any kind of burning challenges that you have, anything that is like on your list that you never get to, a question that you just don't know how to solve on your own. We have so many hours we can spend Googling problems. So today is a good opportunity. And then we will start and learn from Jennifer first and Nikki after that. So thank you both for joining us. And I will let you share your screen now.
Great, thank you. Just bring up the slides just now. There we go. Can we see that? Is that fine?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect, great. So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. As Jessie said, I'm Jennifer and I'm a business advisor with CEIS, specialising largely in marketing communications. So today I really just wanted to share with you some of the tools that you can use across the different touch points when communicating with your customers. So I also, at the end of this, I'm going to go through a journey mapping tool that I wanted to share that I hope will be useful to you when you're doing some planning in the future. So to start with, I just wanted to have a look at kind of the basic buyer decision-making process. So this kind of is the foundation of us understanding how our customers are thinking when they're making decisions as to whether they want to purchase or not. And it's useful to understand this when we think about designing our marketing plans, because it gives us something to kind of hang our ideas on, to understand when people are coming into contact with us and what they need at those different points. So if we just run through this quickly, when we think about purchasing something, obviously this needs to start with some kind of need recognition. So we might think about something, we might see something, we might find that something's finished and we have something that needs to be filled with a product or a service. And this is really the starting point when we start to think about purchasing. Then what will happen is we'll move into this idea of information searching, which is when we start to think about all of the different options that are out there that can help us to fulfill that need that we've already identified. And at this point, we might be looking in lots of different places, and we're really just trying to find all of that information that's available for us. Then what we'll do is we'll start thinking about evaluating them. So we've pulled together a list, and we know ourselves when we're starting to purchase something, or we're thinking about a big purchase particularly, that we'll make a list of all these different things that we have, and we'll start to cross-reference what's good about this one or what's not as good about this one. So that's really the point of this stage here. Your customer is starting to look at you against other alternatives and thinking, well, why is this one better? Why would I choose this one? And then what happens is that we choose to purchase. So that's when we make that decision and we've decided this is the product that we want. And then one of the final stages, which is one of the most important for us as marketers, is to think about that post-purchase evaluation. So what do we feel when we've received that product? How do we feel about the process? How do we feel about the brand after we've purchased? How do we actually feel about the particular product that we have? And that's a really important stage for us to think about, because that then starts to shape the way that the customer feels about us and our brand, and whether they want to come back and purchase from us again. So this is kind of the basic process that we'll all go through when we start thinking about purchasing, and the one that your customer will go through as well. So it's really good to have that in mind when you're thinking about your planning. So if we take that a little bit in context, what I've got here is the same process through the middle. And then what we're trying to do now is try and think about what are all of the different communication tools that are available, or touch points that are available within each stage of this process. So which communication channels do our customers go to when they're trying to fulfill this purchase need that they've identified? So if we start at the beginning again, we think about awareness. So that would be our kind of needs recognition that we talked about on the last slide. And there's lots of different tools here that can be used. So when customers are becoming aware, there's maybe things like email. So if you have somebody already signed up to your newsletter, then you're making them aware of you through using that tool. Online ads, if you have the capacity for a budget for online advertising, so that can be a really great way to kind of pop up into the customer's kind of landscape, and that makes them aware of you and shows them that there's a product there that they might need. Traditional tools like radio, TV, print might also be options at this point, or maybe some PR options. Another great one that we all know is something that can really help raise awareness is word of mouth as well. So it's really good to start thinking about that and be aware that that's a really important tool. And I'll talk about that a bit when we come to the end and talk about advocacy. So then what happens is obviously we move into our consideration stage. And again, there's lots and lots of different tools here that we can start thinking about using to help people to find our products and also to help them to evaluate our products. So we've got things like social ads. So using your social media, you can use obviously paid ads within that, and also just your social media content can be really helpful in making people aware of the products that you have, and also allowing them to start evaluating. Social media is a really powerful tool for us now because it creates this environment where customers can talk to each other. So it extends that word of mouth kind of atmosphere or sphere, and allows people to interact with each other and talk about products in a way that they wouldn't have been able to before. So it's something to be really mindful of when doing that planning stage. Other things like reviews, again, if you have space on your website to create reviews, this can be really, really helpful to your customers in making those decisions. We found that generally customers are much, much more likely to use information that's been supplied by another consumer to make a decision, rather than actually using brand generated content. So there's a real opportunity here for us as brands to get that advocacy and to get that that support from other customers by providing spaces where our customers can comment on the products that they've purchased or on the process that they went through when they were purchasing. So reviews are a really helpful way to do this and can really guide your customer through that journey. Direct mail, again, your newsletter and your mailing list are a great tool for you to have out there. Email sometimes gets a bit of a bad rep, but we tend to find that it has much, much higher engagement rates than some of the other tools, and it tends to be something that really can drive traffic to your website. So that's something to really be aware of when you're thinking about your planning. We then come through onto the purchase. So this is more functional, but also still worth being aware of. Where are you allowing your customer to purchase? Are they purchasing on a website? Are they purchasing from store? Are they purchasing on an e-commerce platform? So are they using a mobile app, or are they using your social media to purchase through? And that can just change maybe some of the messages that you want to send out. So it's worth being aware of that when you're doing that planning stage as well. Then we come to the fun bit. So we come now to retention and advocacy. And this is the bit where we can really help our customers to feel more connected to us. So tools that we have at our disposal here. We have community forums. So again, linking back to that social media piece, is there space on your social media page to create an atmosphere where customers feel they can comment or where they feel they can post? Are you encouraging that relationship between yourself and your customer? Because by doing this, we create a relationship that allows the customer to feel really connected to us. And what that then does is it creates a higher chance of them coming back to purchase from us again. So it's really important to be aware of this post-purchase section, where a lot of the time previously we would have thought, well, they bought from us, so that's great. So that's the end of the transaction. We've done all that work and they've come and they've done what we wanted them to do. But actually, what we want to try and do now is really close this loop that we've created by encouraging our customers to come back to us after they've purchased and tell us what they loved about what we had, tell us why they wanted it, tell us all of these really great pieces of information that allow other customers then to make those decisions as well. So a community forum can be a really good way to do that. And also thinking about how you're using your FAQs. So how is your website structured? Is there space on your website for people to comment on your FAQs? Do you have a robust FAQ section? That can really help people when they have questions after purchasing, and that can really help with the way that the customer feels then about your brand. If they have a problem and they can get a really quick solution to that, then that will make them feel a lot more positively about their product and about what they've experienced. So FAQs can be really good there. Also things like just having an email address or a phone number that people can actually contact you on, they can be really good ways of just creating that relationship there as well. And then finally, we come to advocacy. So this is the part where we really want them to tell us all the great stuff that they loved about what we've done. And here again, we have a few tools at our disposal. So we can use our social networks, as we've kind of discussed. There's also options around using a blog on your website. So you can use your blog to talk about what you're doing, but you can also enable comments on your blog, which allows that customer to feel part of that journey and to feel like they're connected to you. The newsletter, again, is a really important part of this last stage. So thinking about when you're creating your marketing comms plan, how are you communicating through your email across the whole course of this journey, and also then after that as well. So having a plan for those emails and what you want them to do from them can be really helpful in just streamlining that process for you, and also creating a better feeling for the customer. Promotions as well, sometimes things that we don't necessarily want to do that often, but can be a really, really good way of bringing your customer back to you. So is there just a really simple way that you can create a promotion for your customer that drives them back to the beginning and starts them thinking about another product that they might need? This can also, you could do this through kind of social media. There are different ways of creating promotions on there as well that encourage interaction. So lots of different ways of using these tools at different stages within our customer's journey that encourages them just to feel more connected to us as a brand. So what I wanted to do now was just kind of very quickly, because I know we're quite short for time and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, think about it a little bit more in context. So what I've got for you is a tool that I quite like to use when I am thinking about kind of planning my own comms plans. And what we're doing here is we're starting to think about individual customers. So who are our different profile customers, who are our different targets, and how might they behave or interact with us, and what types of information might they need at different stages. And this allows us then to identify what are the best channels or tools that we could put our time into that will get us the best results. So what I've done here is I've just done a really kind of basic example of what this might look like, and I've also got a template behind it that you will get a copy of at the end if you think this is something that you'd like to kind of explore or try yourselves. So my customer here, my background is retail, so I tend to go to type when I think of examples. So my customer is a female, she's 35 and she wants to buy a winter coat. So when we're thinking about what she wants to do when she comes to her awareness stage, where might she find information? So probably she's going to get an email from us because she signed up to our mailing list. So she'll get this promotional email that will tell her about a product. She then might have a look on Instagram and again see a quote and think that's something I'd really like. How will I get this for myself? And then that might cause her to do a bit of a Google search. So she might start looking at what are different options. She also might walk down the street and see something in a window display. And then what we might see when she's starting to investigate is she might look at a few magazines, she might do a more detailed Instagram search, and then what she'll probably start doing is thinking about going to brand websites and maybe more kind of department store websites. When she's coming to choosing, because she's in that slightly older age bracket, which tends to mean that people prefer to go to the brand straight to purchase, she chooses to use her brand website to purchase from, which then automatically brings us into retention, signing her up to the mailing list through purchase. We then have encouraged her through the mailing list to leave us a review. And with this, we've also liked one of her pictures on Instagram because she's tagged us in it. So what we can see here is that through this journey, there are lots and lots of different touch points and lots of different pieces of information that this customer is using to make her decision. So this allows us to kind of try and identify them and then hopefully plan our comms accordingly. So hopefully that's been helpful to you. It's quite a short journey into some journey mapping there for you. But if there's any kind of questions on any of that or any comments, then I'd be happy to take them now. I'll stop sharing the screen.
Thanks for that, and that was really helpful. Actually, do you mind putting back up that last screen that you were sharing?
Absolutely.
I think one of the interesting questions I would love to ask you is, how do you kind of decide, out of all the touch points that you showed you in that longer map, how can you kind of decide what is right depending on the sort of communications project that you want to, promote?
Yeah, okay. I think a lot of it will come down to what is your product, who is your target audience. So what I would quite often do prior to doing the journey mapping is I would do a customer profile. So I would try and think about who is the actual person that would buy this product. And then based on our information, either our market research or our like previous statistics, sales reports, any kind of information you have available, then start thinking about what tools have they used in the past, where have they interacted with us previously. And that will allow you then to identify some of the things that work for you and that maybe haven't worked for you as well in the past as well. So I think it's difficult because it is obviously very product specific. So it depends on which product you're using. But I think it's balancing that idea of what is my product and who is my customer, and then starting to think about that more in context.
That makes sense. There's a question here which is about negative feedback. So, especially when you showed community forums, if it's maybe social media replies or comments, anything that's public, how do you kind of deal with this? Maybe there's a little bit of pre-planning that can be involved, crisis communications, or just deciding in advance with what tone of voice we're replying. What would be your tips on that?
Yeah, and I think the thing that customers really, particularly on social media, value is honesty. So what they're looking for is a really honest conversation between yourselves and themselves. They want to feel like an individual and they want to feel like they've been heard. So I would always kind of say with negative feedback, you don't want to delete it, you don't want to get rid of it. You want it to still be there and you want to show that you've dealt with that effectively. So I think there would be a piece, like you've said, around what is our kind of line on that. So sitting as a team prior to any response or prior to setting anything up and thinking about, well, how do we want to respond? What is our mechanism here? Will we respond to it in public? Will we ask them to respond to us by email? Will we ask them to respond to us privately? I think it's good to have a bit of a balance on that. So you probably want to try and mitigate that problem within the forum and talk about and make the customer feel heard, saying, oh, we're really sorry that you've had a really poor experience. Could you let us know a little bit more about it just offline? And balancing that, being really authentic and being really transparent in the forum, but also treating the customer as an individual through individual communications. But I think it does come down to kind of that initial planning and thinking about what is your tone of voice? How would you normally deal with a complaint offline? Because really you should deal with it in the same kind of way online as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And could you show again that longer customer journey map with the different touch points?
Mm-hmm.
So that's super helpful. And obviously, I think you made a really good comment before about email, saying this is still one of the channels that we are kind of in control of. They still have a good engagement rate. If we're thinking about kind of like a small organization, I think it's so helpful for them to see all of the different touch points that exist. But there are maybe a couple where, as you said, for email, like they will have a better chance at controlling the message, speaking directly to the community, growing a community. So what do you think are perhaps the ones that you find yourself advising clients to, or, the social enterprises to support? Which ones do you advise them to kind of master first if they have to pick maybe 3 or 5 to get right first?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think it's really important to be aware or to think about the fact that each tool will kind of, or each touch point has sort of a different purpose to it in a sense. So I think email is definitely one that I would always kind of advise to use. Try and build your mailing list. Try to encourage as many people as possible, because it's the only real way that you can interact directly with the customer. So I think it's a really important tool that we still have at our disposal to really drive traffic back to our website or back to our purchase channels. And so I would say for sure email is one that I would definitely focus on, and making that consistent and setting it up in a way that isn't too much, doesn't take too much time for you. And I imagine Nikki's probably going to talk about that a little bit anyway, so I won't steal her thunder. Other ones, I think because of the situation or the world that we now live in, social media becomes very important as well, because it increases visibility. So you're not maybe going to get as much interaction with social media, you're not maybe going to get as much conversion from social media, and social media is very difficult to kind of measure that ROI or measure conversion. But what social media does is it places you within the landscape, and it puts you in a place where customers can very easily come to you and find you and see you, and can help to create that relationship between yourselves. So that's sort of how I would see social media. It's more a relationship tool than necessarily a sales tool. I think providing options or opportunities as well, if you have a website for reviews, would be another one that I would really advise if you have the capacity to do that. But I think they're kind of the big ones. I think if you can get your email and your social media right, and your website's at a good level, then they're the ones I would focus on to start with. And you can review that and you can see how that works. And if one doesn't work, then try something different or see how it goes. But it is about just constantly reviewing and being aware of what you wanted to achieve and have you achieved that, I think.
Thank you for sharing your screen. That's really helpful. I have one last, actually a couple more questions, sorry, that I can see in the chat. So Jenna is asking, I really want to create an online community group. Are there any other ways to do this other than a Facebook group? Do you have kind of community growing tips?
So not using a Facebook group.
All right.
No. Sorry, I was questioning.
Oh, yes, that's correct. Are there any other ways to do this?
Other ways?
Yeah.
So I think you can look at different options for putting. I mean, I suppose it goes back to what is your functionality, what you have. So you might be able to use your website to do that. There might be options there for you. I think, if I'm honest, to be honest, Facebook is kind of where people expect to go. So while we might not necessarily feel comfortable or want to use it all the time, it is where people are, and it is where they sort of expect to be interacting with other people. So I guess it depends on who your customers are, again, who are the people you're trying to target. And sometimes even just going to them and saying, well, what do you use? What do you like using? And then take that information and see if there's a way to sort of get around that or to do that in a different way. Depending on capacity, you know, you do have options as well of having kind of like virtual meetings or having those types of community forums if that works better for your service users. So I think it's understanding who they are, but generally my advice would usually be to use Facebook, because that tends to be where the people are.
That is a good tip, and I think it's such a tough kind of a question to answer. I am trying to rack my brain and think which groups I am part of, but definitely most of them would be Facebook groups like digital women in marketing, that sort of thing. I feel like I'm probably part of a couple of LinkedIn groups, so maybe that would be something to look at. But as you said, it really depends on your product or service. If you are more consumer oriented, maybe that won't really be relevant. But let's say that you're providing a service or product that's a bit more in the professional range, maybe it's expertise related or like a niche industry, then maybe that would be helpful. What do you think about kind of like those specific hashtags, maybe like on Twitter, where you have like an hour about a specific topic? Maybe it's not building a community as such, but maybe it's having a regular kind of check-in with your community, that you get them used to the idea that like that's an hour on this channel they can go to talk about a specific topic.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea, and I think it is this. It's quite hard in a sense to kind of say this is how you should do it, because it is so kind of personal to each organization. But I think, yeah, that would be a great idea if you have that type of following and you have enough people there that you think would engage. The risk can be, obviously, if people don't engage, then it sort of falls. But it is definitely something that would be worth trying if you felt that you had a topic that people would really, really respond to. And maybe it's about doing a bit of advertising before that and using your emails to drive people, or setting up people beforehand within the organization that can come in and they can post on that day within that hour to encourage that participation. But I think that's a really, really interesting idea for sure.
What I love about what you said as well is is that, you know, it's about reviewing things. So it's okay to try things. That's the whole point. And if you do it once or twice and it falls flat, it happens to all of us. And like, that's the point. You can just experiment, and it will teach you things about your audience, so that the more you get a feeling for what they like and what they engage with, which platforms, which type of content, then it will make you a little bit easier for you to get that map that that you were showing at the end, like, you know, where is your customer going, which kind of channel and in which order. Then you develop like an intuition for this sort of thing. A couple more questions, and then we can go to Nikki. So Charlene is asking, do you have any tips? By the way, you can stop sharing your screen if you want, Jen. We can see you bigger. My fault. So Charlene is asking, do you have any tips for different ways to grow your newsletter subscriber list specifically?
I think it would depend. Again, this is always really hard because I don't have the context. So I think depending on what you're doing already, you definitely would want to have some kind of sign up link on your website. So when people are driven there, you want to make sure that they really easily can see that and access that, and that they want to sign up. So, I mean, you can do it through pop-ups, and you can kind of make it come up the minute you come onto the screen. But I think making that really visible would be helpful. You can even do things like, if you're talking on social media or you have a good following on social media, you can tell people that you're doing it, tell people that you have a great newsletter, or link people to your newsletter. So you can publish your newsletter as a link, particularly on LinkedIn, or you could do it through Twitter, and that lets people see what the newsletter looks like, and then says, oh, well, actually, maybe I would really like to sign up to that. If you're posting or you're selling physical products, another way to do that is to have a card that goes in with the product. So within your packaging somewhere, encourage me to sign up and tell me why it's really exciting. Tell me why I would want to. So am I going to find out about your new releases before everybody else does? Am I going to receive a birthday treat? Am I going to receive a promotion at some point? So I think with newsletters, people are a bit more wary now of giving away their email. But I think if we make it really clear to them that there's a benefit to them rather than a benefit to us, then that can be really helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to jump in and say, just from my experience, a free PDF download, so people do white papers or a travel guide or something like that, is quite a good, another of the sort of bonuses you were talking about, Jennifer, for getting people to sign up.
Oh yeah, like lead generation in some way. So you offer a goodie, and then it's a way to capture someone's email address because they are interested in the content that you provide, and then they go to your email list.
Yeah,
that's a good one. I think what I'm really keeping in mind with everything that you both just said is that transparency thing that you mentioned, Jen, like being clear about what people get out of in your communications. Being open is, so if you have a newsletter, this is what you're going to get on it, this is how often it's going to be sent, we're not going to spam you, and as if you like manage to match that content promise with what they're actually getting, then they'll be happy to receive the content that you send them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One more question from Ian. So he's saying Medium and Reddit are excellent places to create a community group depending on the age of the people you're trying to unite. That's a good one. I think actually it's one of these things where beyond Facebook, we can all probably, depending on the product or service that we have, I think the idea, if we think about that particular target audience we're speaking to, if you put yourself in their shoes, then that's probably when you can start to be sort of creative with where to reach them. So if let's say that your product is something that has to do with gaming or mental health for gamers, I'm going like totally off topic here, but let's say it's that, then of course Reddit would be a good place because Absolutely. You will find lots of gamers on Reddit, or maybe on forums that have to do with that specific topic. So that's a good point, Ian.
Yeah. Any other option, I guess, when I'm thinking about it, is things like Slack also could be useful depending on what you do or who your customer is. That could also be a great place for you to use to stimulate that conversation.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was super, super helpful and lots of food for thought, I think. And then we'll have Nikki come on now.
Hi everybody. Right, let me try and share my screen. Coming up.
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Great. Make that a bit bigger. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I really enjoyed that presentation. Actually, the customer journey, your lovely diagram there was a really nice, simple, clear way to display all the different points along the journey, and some of them I'll cover in my speech today. I've based it more on some practical tips because when I join these things, I work on my own a lot of the time, and I find it's really great to swap tips with people. So I thought I'd give you some of the things I use today, and that's what I based my talk on. So my reduce, reuse and recycle was really to look at ways to reduce the time that you spend creating your communications and content, reuse the content for different channels, and recycle the content by making small changes and using it on different places. So to make your content work hard for you and build your brand by strong messaging across the channels, you can spend an awful lot of time creating content. So each piece of content that you create, you want to make that piece of content work really hard for you. So you can repurpose this content for different channels. So you can edit your text, resize photos, add tags, links. So I always make sure that every hour I've spent writing that press release or whatever it was, that piece of content works really hard. So a press release, for example, could become a blog, could be edited down to be a social media post, could be put into a newsletter. These things can all link together. And the images that go with it, any quotes, they can all be resized and reused as well. The bonus of this is not just saving you time, it also provides consistency with your communications and also tailor them to the different audiences on the different channels. So here, this is a selection of the software that I use and the content sources that I find useful. Like I said before, I'd be really interested at the end of this to hear what you guys use for your different communications and planning, because different things suit different people. These are pretty mainstream, the ones that I'm using here. Canva, Hootsuite and Dropbox, they're the three things that I use every day and I couldn't really be without. In the past, I've used a lot of Adobe software. It's it's amazing software, but it is quite expensive and it takes quite a bit of time to learn. And often it's super clever software and actually you just need one tiny little bit of it, but you're paying for a great big package. So I've tried to look at things that are a bit more on the affordable scale. So the first one is Hootsuite, and I'm sure you've all heard of Hootsuite. If you have more than one social media channel, especially if you're looking after multiple brands, Hootsuite can save you an awful lot of time. You've just got the one login, then you're into your Twitter account, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, it's all there. And this is my very busy looking SKS Twitter account. Probably could have picked a quieter board to share with you. But I just wanted to give you an example of how I organize my Hootsuite boards. So this is a board. I've got a board for my Twitter one. And for Facebook, I'll have a separate board, etc. And for different brands, I'll have different boards. And within the board, I have streams. So the first stream there is my scheduled tweets. So they'll be planned for later on today or tomorrow or further in the future. Then I like to put my actual tweets so I can see, if you're working on lots of different campaigns, what did I tweet last time? Have I mentioned this? So it's always useful to have that there. Then the next thing I do is have the mentions. So if people have tagged me in something, I can say thanks, I can interact with them, I can reply, I can retweet. And then the next load of streams there is all to do with monitoring the lists that I've set up in Twitter, hashtags, keywords, that kind of thing. And they might change depending on what campaigns we're doing and what's in the news. The other slide here is just a little snapshot of that's a Facebook post that I was putting together. So you can have all your different, you can connect all your different social media streams there. There's a little box in the middle. It's where you can put your text, you can put your links there, you can shorten them, you can tag people, you can put your hashtags. The bottom box there with media, you can add images that you've resized for the different channels. And then you can choose when to schedule that, depending on obviously all the analytics you've been looking at. So you've done all of that and it all goes into a nice calendar for you. And that calendar you can give access to other team members. You can get someone else to come along and check your copywriting. And you can really easily drag those posts around. So you might decide, oh, actually, Facebook is better off a bit earlier in the day. I'll move that post up a bit. And then I just find it a really easy way to schedule content. It's not perfect. It works really well for Twitter. Facebook and Instagram recently, they've redone the software and it's not quite as useful as it was. I think Facebook and Instagram want you to use their platforms. They're not that keen on third parties and they seem to be giving them less and less access, which is a bit of a shame because I think unless you only use Facebook and Instagram, you're going to want some other tool that helps you monitor all those different accounts. And because of that, I've been looking around for someone different. There's Sprouts Social, there's Buffer, there's another one called Content Cal that I came across when I was looking, which is good for smaller organizations and social companies. So maybe at the end of this, I'd be really interested to find out if you have, maybe you have a tip for me that there is something better than Hootsuite out there. So Hootsuite, you can do free accounts and some of my clients will just, as long as you've got enough different email addresses to set up different accounts, you can get free accounts. If you're monitoring quite a few different channels, then you start to need to pay for the software and it can get quite expensive. So Canva is another really popular piece of software. It's probably one of my favorite ones. It's really simple to use. It's great for social media, for websites, PowerPoints, emails, business cards, you name it, Canva will tell you it can do it. If you're a graphic designer, you'll hate it probably because we'll all start thinking of graphic designers using Canva, but it's really useful tool for day-to-day use. You can load your images up onto it and you can connect to things like Dropbox and Google Drive to pull in your images. They've got loads and loads of different templates you can use from their database, or you can create your own. You can store brand colors, you can store fonts so that you stick to your brand guidelines, because it is quite tempting with all their little bits and pieces you can add to it to make things go a bit busy and a bit overexcited, and suddenly everything's gone pink and your brand is blue. So it's worth sometimes keeping yourself in check. And it's really one of the most useful things is resizing the images. So for example, if you've created a bit of content for Instagram, on an Instagram sized image, you can just with a touch of a button, you can tell it to resize that for Twitter, to resize that for Facebook, to make it into a business card. So you don't have to just start from scratch every time. And I tend to, if I'm working with a client that's maybe got Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, I will resize the images and I'll name them with some sort of naming protocol with location, people, copyright. And then I tend to put like a TW for Twitter, an FB for Facebook, or an Insta at the end of it, so that I know which size each image is. You can store them for use later, or you can with Canva directly post to social media. You can put advertising on that. Maybe that's just Hootsuite advertising. You can post directly to social media channels from Canva. This presentation, actually, I did it in Canva, which was a first for me, using it for presentations. I think it's working okay. You can probably tell me what you think of it. I think the only thing is you can't do notes. So I have some notes here, like you can in PowerPoint. So there you go. And this slide is just a few more bits of software that I use. So Dropbox, I'm sure everyone's heard of. I really use that as my file sharing, file storage. It's cloud-based. You can get a free account, which for a lot of people will be plenty. I do have a paid account because I have an awful lot of photos and images. And I think it's about £79 for the year, but I use it every day. You know, I can go and log on to Jess's computer and work from there because all my stuff's in Dropbox and I'm away, so it's brilliant that way. But I know there's lots of other things out there as well, OneDrive, Google, lots of things out there. The next piece of software there is Pixlr, which is, I use that when I'm not using Canva for images. I used to use Photoshop all the time. My file got corrupted. I needed to buy the software again. And I just thought, you know, I only need something quite simple. And this just does the simple job. So if you don't need anything fancy, that's quite a good one to try. Other things I use, Unsplash is great for copyright-free images. So you can download them, stick them in your Canva and play around with them, although Canva does have quite a good stock of images itself. People like Getty Images, you can ask permission to use their images. Visit Scotland, I use a lot for my travel clients. So if you've got a body that you are associated with, you know, they may well have an image store that you can say to them, can I have access to this? You know, obviously you need to credit them for the images, but it's useful because obviously images are so important these days, and video. So if you can get a good variety of sources, then you'll always have some nice fresh content on the go. Talking about video, I use iMovie to edit my videos, but then I work on a Mac. So if you don't, something like Animoto does good little short, snappy videos, which are very good for social media. Email was a big chat in Jennifer's presentation. So everyone's heard of MailChimp. It is really useful. It connects in with lots of different pieces of software, with your website, with social media, that kind of thing. And it is brilliant. It's really user-friendly, but there are lots of different ones out there. Contact Send is one that I quite like to use as well. But maybe you can let us know which email software you use. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to mention was stats. So you can't really talk about communications and content without telling people to look at their stats. And we probably all hear it all the time and don't quite get around to it. But Google Analytics, Twitter Analytics, Facebook Insights, you know, all the different, you know, your email software will have stats as well. It is worth trying to look at them reasonably regularly. You can get tools. I think it's Google have one that will pull it all in for you to create a report that updates itself. It does take a little while to put together. But, you know, Google Analytics will help you with your website. It'll tell you which pages are performing the best, how long people spend on them. You know, Twitter you can see which of your tweets have gone out, which content's working, so that you know, oh, okay, so people like to hear about this or that, or you know, see what's worth you putting all this time and effort into creating. And Facebook Insights, again, that's got tons of information there. You can see, you know, for example, you've created all these lovely posts, when should you put them up? You know, it's a really easy way to find out, okay, 12 o'clock every day, that's when my maximum audience is on. You know, haven't necessarily got a big advertising budget, so let's put my post out there at the time of day when I know the most number of people are going to be there to get the best reach from my post. You can schedule it in Hootsuite, all your lovely designs you've made in Canva, and away you go. So that was it from me. Hopefully that's not you in the picture after my talk. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, or if anyone would like to share what you know, their tips about what they use, then please shout.
Thank you, Nikki. That was great. And actually, as you were talking along, a lot of the attendees shared all kinds of tools. So I will make sure that I save the chat, and that I will include the best tools under the different categories and links to that in the PDF that I sent along with the recording, because there's great stuff in there that I've never heard about. so that would be good. One thing that I was wondering is, you know, I find your tip about scheduling and things like that, beyond social, just in general, having an idea in your head of what is going live when on which channels. How do you recommend that people sort of like plan their communications like in one place? Like it can be as simple as a Google Sheet maybe with dates and like different action steps. What do you do with all these clients that you're working with at the same time to basically stay sane?
Well, I tend to just use a basic Excel spreadsheet, because all my clients know how to use that. It'll have the different dates across the top, communication channels down the sides, and then you know, just coloured bars across, because then you can easily see where things might overlap, where you can reuse the content. And quite often, if it's you know, if we're building up for a launch or something, then the information that maybe you're releasing certain parts every month, you know, that can go in that spreadsheet too. That with a combination of something like a calendar in your social media posting, you know, that then shows that a bit more graphically. It's trying to find a way of reporting it and sharing it without having to spend hours creating a report. And you know, people might have more interesting ways to do that as well.
I love that. I also really loved your tip about naming your pictures well, because you know, I joined ICS this summer, and at Social Enterprise Scotland we have so many pictures of different social enterprises, but I am looking in the Google Drive, like Googling people's names or organizations' names, and it's so hard to find them. So I think like, let's all help ourselves. And when we say
that realization came from going through the process that you've just said, you know, I've got this full drive of images and I can't find, you know, so just spending that bit of time doing that, and then you can reuse them. You know, you don't necessarily want to use them the same week, but it just, yeah, that is really helpful. And I think everyone's guilty of having a very messy image library.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Ella is asking about kind of posting frequency. Obviously, Jen shared a lot of examples of really good channels to look at. If you think about blog, newsletter, social media, what do you both kind of recommend in terms of, you know, you said when to post, we can look at our insights. That's really helpful. When are people on your channels? But just best practices.
Well, I mean, I would say, you know, I think you can Google this and different people will tell you different things. I think you've really got to, like Jennifer was saying, think about who your audience is. And I personally would just try and put myself in their shoes and think, how often do they want to hear from me? Different channels, you can see how many people have seen in that post. I think the frequency of posting on social media, you can make those post less, especially if you can use a bit of advertising spend. If you can boost a post, then that more of your audience are going to see it, rather than having to keep repeating that message. So social media's got some tools so that you can help yourself, give it a little push along. Even just for a few pounds can really make a big difference if you've got some advertising spend. Emails, I think you can see if you can ask people at the end of the email process if they're if they're unsubscribing. Why are you unsubscribing? Well, because you've been emailing me twice a day, driving me mad. So I think it's looking, for me, it would be looking at the stats and seeing what they're telling me, and then adapting my process from there. I don't know what you think, Jennifer.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think it's so difficult to give a kind of best practice or this is what you should start with, I suppose, because you don't necessarily know who the person is that we're talking to. So I would absolutely agree. You want to think about who is that person, and then how might they want to be communicated with. What I usually kind of start with, if you're starting from scratch, is I would tend to do maybe one email a week. And then I would work around something like maybe 4 or 5 posts on social a week and see how that works. And if you get really good response, then you can maybe up that a bit. Or if you feel like it's not working as well, you can decrease that. And that tends to be my baseline. And then I adapt it from there. So maybe that's helpful, but it just really depends on who that person is, unfortunately. And so it's difficult to give a definitive start with this sort of answer, I guess.
That's true. And I think you're both right. And it also depends kind of on your capacity as well. I know, for instance, for the blog, we're doing 1 blog post a week on the Social Enterprise Colon website. So it's like a Monday feature where we ask one of the social enterprise to basically like write a piece for us. So, going back to what Nikki said, there are possibly ways that you can plan some content where you're not doing like all the work, or where you're taking that content, that original version, and then you're having little versions of it for social, little versions for your newsletter. So maybe it's something to think about. Looking at the time, we're almost at 5. No, we have more questions. A quick question about, because, we talked about like insights, and what do you think, kind of good key performance indicators, like metrics that someone could look at tracking over time to evaluate their kind of comms and marketing efforts? Because there are so many, but what do you guys recommend kind of looking at if someone wants to start sort of mapping their analytics a little bit?
Well, I find that for the different channels, I try and set sort of key performance indicators for different channels, and that might be example of it might be email signups, it might be how many people have downloaded my lovely free PDF guide to buying your winter coat or whatever it is. So it would be touch points like that, and to see whether people have done the actions that I've asked them to do, or that was the outcome I was hoping. They're the key points that I think matter the most. Other things, like number of people that have gone onto your website, the reach of your Facebook post, these are all really important. But I guess it's more about the key, if you are spending ages doing a press release or an email, what do you want to get out of that? You want to get people to download this, you want to get people onto the website, you want to get people into your shop. That's the stat I think actually is the most important one.
That makes sense. So making sure that the metrics you're tracking depend on the initial objective that you kind of gave yourself, what you're trying to accomplish. Great. Kate had said she was finding it quite laborious to post on Instagram. They have Facebook and Instagram. She hasn't tried Hootsuite yet. Obviously, I think that with social media channels, as you showed us on Hootsuite, you can easily schedule to like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. You can tag people in there. You can have hashtags. For Facebook and Instagram, I guess the difficulty is sometimes, and you touched on this, is like the reach. Even if you have a community of like 5,000 people, you post something and then it won't reach a lot of people. On Instagram, at least you have the hashtags, so you can try and find a community. And you mentioned maybe a little bit of media budget can help with that. Do you have any other tips maybe about visuals or the length of the post? People can always try and experiment, but do you have any tips?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think probably just to repeat myself again and say try different things and look to see how people respond. You know, people might really love seeing lots of different images of people wearing winter coats up close. They might like to see a video. They might like to see, you know, someone out walking their dog wearing the winter coat. So to actually sort of have in your head maybe 3 or 4 different things you're going to try this month, and then look back at the stats and see, you know, whether that worked well for you.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Absolutely. Like, anything else? No, I would totally agree. I think it is. It's one of the kind of problems with social media, but one of the benefits of social media is that we get this real opportunity to kind of explore and be a bit more creative and mix up all the different types of content that we create, which can feel really laborious. So I think, like Nikki's saying, doing that sort of testing phase and almost setting yourself, let's say for the next 3 months, we're going to plan to try and work out what people are responding to. So we're going to each week mix up the content. We're going to do a focus on some relational content, some more kind of image focus, some video focus, play around with the length of posts as well. So think about like maybe trying something with 2 lines of text, some with 4, that type of thing as well, to then get a much better feel for who those people are and what they'll respond to. I think it's unfortunately one of those things with social media. It's really just about working out what people like and how they like it in that space, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I think trying to draw them in, to get them into the conversation, to you know, asking questions is something that you always read that you should be doing. Sometimes it's horrendous and you just fall flat on your face and no one answers your question. Other times it just seems to spark something in people and you only need a few people to respond and everyone's off, and that's fantastic. And actually I've not quite worked out exactly when it works and when it doesn't. I think sometimes there's a bit of luck in there, but yeah, I think just try out some different things.
Great. I think this is the message of the day. Sorry, Jennifer, what were you saying?
No, all I was going to say on top of that was if you're thinking about doing question posts, they, like Nick says, they can work really well. But the other thing that you can kind of do with that to try and help it along a little bit is use your team. So think about trying to get people within your organization interested, get people in your board to respond, ask them to be part of this, and put a bit of that kind of onus of marketing onto them as well, because marketing is something that the whole organization should be involved in. It shouldn't just be the one person whose title or job it is to create the content and push it out there. Everybody needs to be involved in that process and be interacting and responding to that. And just having 2 or 3 people respond to a question can actually then completely open up the conversation. But nobody wants to be the first person. It's like going to a party early. You don't want to be that person. You want to be the one that's a bit fashionably late. So you need to have a few people that come in at the beginning that you've almost kind of set up to do that, to stimulate that organic interaction then.
That's a really good tip. I like that. And honestly, I completely agree. I think especially since we said like it's about on social channels, like being transparent, being human. There's no reason that it has to be just one person who takes care of that. Sometimes someone else on your team will have the answer to a customer question on Twitter. So it's good to like involve everyone. Well, we're after 5, so I want to say like thank you so much both for joining us and sharing your insights. That was really, really helpful. I will follow up next week with the recordings of the sessions of this week and the little PDF recaps. I just wanted to say if anyone is keen to join us tomorrow, we already have 30 signups as well for our last bootcamp session of the week. And so that one will be about talking to the press and media and also working with influencers. So that's going to be a good one too. So if you're interested in that, then join us tomorrow at 4. And thank you so much again, Jennifer and Nikki. This was great. So really, really appreciate that you took the time to be with us today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.